2 years ago, Islamic State extremists declared the northern Syrian city of Raqqa as the capital of their Islamist empire. It's become one of the most brutal places on earth, with reports of rapes, beatings, beheadings, summary executions, you name it. At great personal risk, a number of small people inside the city are providing first-hand accounts of Islamic State brutality. The media activists have formed the group Raqqa is being slaughtered silently. The ABC's Connie Agius reports.
Abu Ibrahim, not his real name, lives in Raqqa, a city on the banks of the Euphrates River in northern Syria, around 160 kilometres east of Aleppo. It's also the capital of the self-declared Islamic State, also known to many as ISIS. At great risk to his own safety, Abu Ibrahim documents what life is like under the extremist group.
Imagine that you are in a city that don't have schools, don't have universities, it don't have banks, it don't have anything. The only thing that you need to do in the city is to eat and sit in your home. You cannot talk, you cannot do anything. ISIS close everything. ISIS force actually the woman to put veils and to cover everything. It's very hard to live under ISIS. The water and electricity cut all the time. And even if you got injured, there is not a lot of doctors or not a lot of hospitals. And even, ISIS make sure that their fighters getting the best doctors and the best hospitals, but they don't care about civilians and make the civilians like a human shields.
Abu Ibrahim co-founded Raqqa is being slaughtered silently, which has become one of the few reliable sources of information about atrocities committed in the ISIS stronghold.
From execution to beheaded to killing to arresting people, torturing people.
The group's dangerous work has won it international acclaim. Its members face serious consequences if they're caught by ISIS.
If ISIS catch you, take any photo or talking against them in Facebook or Twitter and bad things, they will execute you immediately. They will accuse you that you are an infidel, or they will accuse you that you are a spy.
Their brutality extends outside the areas it controls.
Even in Turkey, the guys, for our members, when they think they are safe in Turkey, they follow them to Turkey and kill them. 2 of our guys in Raqqa has been slaughtered silently campaign was in their apartment in Şanlıurfa, southern of Turkey, and several guys of ISIS came to their apartment and stabbed them and beheaded them and killed them. And then ISIS released a video claim responsibility for killing them.
A coalition of Western and Arab nations, including the United States, France and Russia, are carrying out almost daily bombing raids on Raqqa.
There's a lot of airstrikes targeting places like electricity, oil, or refineries, and these things, it's making the price in the city very high and very expensive. And this not only affect ISIS, but it's affect people. ISIS don't care about the prices because they have a lot of money, but the people, they don't have money, and a lot of people are starving in the city and standing in lines for food. And especially the Russian airstrike targeting most of the times hospitals, schools, bridges, electricity stations. So they make the life very hard for the people.
Despite these dangers, the group shows no sign of stopping its work.
That report from the ABC. We're going to stay in Syria because a global appeal urging governments around the world to step up their efforts to end the humanitarian crisis has been launched today. More than 100 humanitarian non-governmental organisations, NGOs, and UN agencies have launched an appeal asking for world leaders to help end the war in Syria. Goodness gracious, some of them are behind the war in Syria, aren't they? UNICEF is one of those organisations. Its executive director here in New Zealand is Viv Maderborn. She recently travelled to Lebanon with Sunnybill Williams. And she joins us now from our Wellington studio. Viv, it's lovely to have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here, John.
It's a nightmare, isn't it, sorting Syria out, because of course on the one hand the UN is trying desperately hard to do more, and we talked to New Zealand's permanent ambassador to the UN about the work that they're trying to do up there. On the other hand, Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council and is actively involved. The United States actively involved. How on earth do you get in there to do good work?
Well, it's really true that the United Nations Security Council has all the remits it needs to really back up peace for Syria, but what's not happening is that those remits aren't being implemented on the ground. So all kudos to the New Zealand ambassador. He's done great work in that Security Council. But now countries, the politicians and the world leaders and the people, in this war need to really commit to finding a path to peace, because we're about to enter the 6th year of brutal, just brutal life for so many people.
And you have seen some of the casualties of that, although the ones who've survived it, the people who have been traumatised, who have lost everything, who have fled their homes, because you've been to refugee camps in Lebanon twice, I think, haven't you?
I have, yes, and I wouldn't say that they know they've survived it yet. Their boy children are being lured back across the border to fight as child soldiers in various armies. Their girls are being sold as into child marriage as a result of the fear of having to keep them safe. So there are not many people in Lebanon who feel like they've survived yet. They still feel very much like they're in a war.
How traumatised and damaged are those people, Viv?
Look, in some ways it's life as normal. You go into a camp, the camp could be dismantled any day. It's just up to the farmer whose field it is to let them stay or not. So in some ways it's completely impermanent and everybody's worried and anxious. And on the other hand, people are collecting firewood, they're trying to earn a little bit of money by picking crops, they're trying to get their children into school, and very normalising activities are actually what keeps people hopeful in that environment. Yeah,
just the ordinary stuff. Let's talk about the work UNICEF is trying to do. How do you get stuff into Syria? What's the most effective work UNICEF and the people who support it can do?
One of the reasons why the citizenship appeal, the people of the world standing up and saying, let's end this war, is because Syria has been incredibly difficult to get consistent humanitarian aid into. And, behind the lines of the item that we just heard on the radio, it's just not safe for humanitarian agencies to go in there. But there's also 15 other towns around Syria, many of which are besieged or under siege by the regime itself, that are equally unsafe. So even though we might not be able to see our way to peace in the next month, there is nothing practically that stops agreements being reached to get humanitarian aid into these towns and to these people who are, so desperate.
Viv, I know one of the things about being an NGO is that you can't annoy people, because you've got to work with everyone everywhere. But I am sensing an increasing level of frustration now.
Yeah. I would go so far as to say that the Security Council has worked so hard to get an infrastructure in place. But now we've got to go beyond that, and we've really got to have world leaders step up to the political leadership of ending this war. It's just undescribable that in the 21st century we've got the kind of starvation and deprivation we're seeing.
Viv Maderborn, who is the Executive Director of UNICEF New Zealand. Thanks so much for joining us, Viv. We really appreciate it.